talk of the town was that he was going to get the Pulitzer Prize that year, but it went to John Gould Fletcher anyway. Anyway, he was nominated for the Pulitzer. Just a brilliant poet. And Marie was actually a brilliant painter who transitioned into an incredible filmmaker. And so there are these incredible talents who were my mentors at that time. And but I love them dearly, and they are just magic all the time.
So if they had been slightly less drunk, we might have gotten more of
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, no, Marie can hold her own in a decent conversation, and so could Willard for that matter. And they talked about poetry, and they talked about filmmaking, and they talked about painting.
And she would have talked about the Metropolitan Museum if she had not been so drunk. I mean, for example, that was one of the questions asked of her in the film, like 3 or 4 times, and she kept.
Tonight?
Yeah, in the movie.
It was hard to hear the questions tonight.
Yeah.
But, so I had a question about, this is something I couldn't quite reconcile. She mentioned that Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was presumably Willard, and she arguing about her miscarriage. You told me that you thought that she actually had given birth and that their child died
a week
later.
Yeah.
And then she wanted to adopt you. And I'm wondering about all of that. And you may not be able to answer this question, but of course, George and Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf have an imaginary child.
In the movie, yes. Mike Nichols movie, there's an innuendo, a reference to a character who was not in the movie.
The imaginary child, right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's more to that in terms of their wanting a child. I mean, they wanted to adopt you, but...
Well, Willard already had a young boy with his first marriage. Stephen Moss, who actually passed away a few years ago. He lived on Avenue A for many, many years. And I knew Stephen fairly well. Aspiring but very frustrated actor. And so Willard did have a son, and then they divorced ultimately, Stephen's mom and Willard, and then Willard met Marie, I believe, at Yaddo. And of course, one of them was up, they were both up there at the same time, actually. That's how they met, I believe. And eventually they ended up being together, you know, and there probably was a moment when they discussed or had yearnings to have a child, but it never really came to fruition.
One more question that I'm sure many people in the audience would like to know, and you don't have to answer it.
Yeah.
But did you ever finally hook up with Edie?
Say that again?
Did you ever finally hook up with Edie?
Hook up?
No, hook up. I know it's a location.
Yes.
Did you and Edie ever get it on? You don't have to answer. You don't have to answer.
My lips are half sealed.
So I'm going to move on to Greg, and I will get to you, Mark, in a minute when we talk about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But can you talk a little bit about the Warhol canon and how this does and or does not fit into it? You alluded to that before, but like in his filmography, I mean, there were many, many, many films he made that just never saw the light of print. Where might this fall in in the real canon? I mean, does it will never make it?
No, I mean, I talk about the canon, meaning the films that the artist okayed and put out. And actually, I mean, as far as I know, all the films that were available for rental through the Filmmakers Cooperative back in the day, as far as I know, all the notes were written by you, correct?
Some of them, I don't think I wrote all of them.
I mean, most of those, I think, are So those films, there was 2 catalogs where the films were available. It was the 63rd one and the 4th one. And so there's different ones. There was ones that were first available in the number 3, and then they were taken out because they were taken out of distribution or lost or destroyed. And then new ones
were destroyed.
Well, some were like wrecked. I mean, there's things that are missing. Like,
really?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
Most Beautiful Women.
Really?
Dance movie is missing. There's a lot of films that no longer exist in there.
The dance, what dance?
Dance movie, the Freddie Greco film.
Oh, I'm not, I thought they may have rediscovered it, but I'm not sure.
No, we have outtakes, but we don't have the actual
Oh, okay,
45.
that's where he was on the roller skates,
Yeah,
skating in the
exactly.
streets of New York.
That's never been, that one's a lost film.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things like that, and that's original in print, because there was a print available at the co-op at one point, the dance movie and some other
yeah.
like that. But
That's a
to go back to
side-
the canon, like Bitches, I mean, if you look at the catalog raised today, the new one, every film is listed that they know of, and we've gone through that. I've made a case to just talk about the films that are released, unreleased, and sometimes films versus footage. I have a whole thing about, some things are just stuff that Andy shot to test bullets back in the day. And he even says that in certain tapes that we have at the Warhol.
Well, he never, once he started shooting sound, he basically gave up with the bullets.
Except for, well, their screen tests fall
Yeah,
through, and
yeah.
A lot of the Velvet stuff that you guys were.
Well, the screen test stopped at, I think, January of 1967.
Yeah, because there's all the stuff for the Velvets is through '66, at least like the
Yeah,
winter and the spring
yeah.
and all that. But yeah, and those are the last they're basically the last screen
And
tests.
he became hooked to the Oregon
Yeah,
movie camera.
sure.
In fact, I'm wondering who did the sound on the movie we just saw.
That's Buddy.
It is
Buddy
Buddy
Workshop,
Workshop.
yeah,
Okay, I
yeah,
thought so.
yeah.
So that wasn't particularly resolved, the sound.
It's inherent to the gear. They've always talked and written about that in
The
the past.
problem with the sound in this movie, it wasn't Buddy Workshop's fault really, but Andy was very lazy about learning the technical part of making a sound movie. And one of the things was that he shot single system, which meant that the sound went directly onto the movie camera. There was no tape recorder involved. Big mistake when you're shooting a movie. Eventually that got cleared up later on, and Buddy was kind of phased out, but so that was the premise in terms of the progression of the sound movies for Andy. So when you see a film like tonight, the sound could have been better, but it wasn't because it was a single system.
Can you remember any more from just watching it again? I think this is your second time, I assume. Like, who else was there? I heard John Wilcock is off to the side with Buddy. Chuck Wine was there. Andy was there.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, there's so many. Was Sheldon Renan there?
Who
the
is
writer?
who is standing behind Marie?
That's Ronald
That's
Sabell.
Ronald Sabell.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And who is that John Hawkins? Who
Yes,
is?
John Hawkins was on the
You
side.
kept trying to.
Yeah,
And that's one of Willard's boyfriends. So there's all the stuff that's going on in this is pretty intense. It's like Willard had so many boyfriends.
John contributed to making some really nice film titles for Marie's movies.
You know that? No, really?
Yeah.
Like what? What was the?
I forget the names of the films now, but I saw one or two with John's and handiwork. It was quite good.
Can you, Greg, is there a way, and this is probably a stupid question, is there like a number, like an actual number of films, Warhol films, that would constitute
The forgotten movies.
no, but I mean, a real canon. I mean, are there like a dozen?
Whatever we would consider legitimate, or just like the whole.
Well, let's say movies that he thought, he would put his name on and believe were serious.
I think there's probably like 50 or so that were, that again were rentable at the time, and even after they pulled the films from distribution, they were putting out things that never were in the co-op, like Tough Girls, The Invitation of Christ, 4 Stars, the 2-hour version. There's so many films that, there's a lot.
And this would not be one of them.
This was, my take on, my basic thing about the films is that Warhol shot things, and when things were printed, maybe Gerard, you can talk about this, and I'm always interested about this.
Okay.
A long time ago, he shot that one film of Jack Smith filming Normal Love, and it was probably shown in Jonas's News Regino's.
With the bullets.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was the one film that was shown at a Cinematheque screening, and Andy showed it in original form, and the cops came, busted it, and that film got stolen by the police, and it's a lost film. There's
The one on everybody on the wedding cake?
Yeah, that's gone.
Oh, so the only existence is the photograph on the cover.
Exactly.
Film culture.
Yeah.
Wow, that's too bad.
So there's film. So I think after that,